You don't realize it at first, because narcissists don't walk in waving a red flag, they walk in wearing a mask. They'll charm you, praise you, and make you feel like you've finally met someone who truly sees you. But over time, that mask starts to slip. The compliments turn into criticism, love turns into control, and you start questioning your own worth. This speech isn't about blaming them, it's about freeing you. Because the moment you learn to recognize the patterns, you take your power back. The first sign of a narcissistic partner isn't how they treat you in the beginning, it's how they react when you stop feeding their ego. That's when you see the truth. Because in the beginning, they'll make you feel like you've finally found your person, the one who understands you, appreciates you, and celebrates you in a way no one else ever has. They'll mirror your interests, your words, even your energy. You'll think, finally, someone gets me. But that version of them isn't real. It's a carefully crafted illusion. Narcissists are masters of performance. They study you, they learn your insecurities, your desires, your values, and then they use those things not to connect with you, but to control you. It starts with love bombing. They overwhelm you with affection, attention, and promises. They text constantly, compliment endlessly, and make grand declarations about your future together. You feel chosen, special, almost high on the intensity of it all. But that high is part of the trap. Because what they're really doing is setting a baseline, a version of love so intense that when they start withdrawing it, you'll chase it. You'll think you're trying to fix the relationship, but in reality, you'll just be trying to get back to the version of them that never existed. When you first begin to set a boundary, maybe you say no to something small or you call them out on a lie, that's when the shift begins. They don't get angry right away, they get cold, detached. The warmth disappears and suddenly you're confused. You'll wonder if you did something wrong. You'll start replaying conversations in your head, trying to figure out what changed. That confusion is exactly what they want. Because a confused mind is easy to manipulate. The narcissist's sense of self depends entirely on control and admiration. They need to feel superior, desired, and in charge. So when you stop providing them with constant validation, when you stop reacting the way they want, it threatens them. They can't handle being questioned or challenged because deep down, they don't have a stable sense of identity. Their confidence is a mask held together by your approval. When that approval disappears, they panic. But instead of facing that insecurity, they project it onto you. Suddenly, you're too sensitive, too dramatic, or never satisfied. They twist the story so you become the problem. And the most dangerous part, they don't do it loudly at first. They do it subtly, through sarcasm, dismissive comments, or emotional withdrawal. You'll start hearing phrases like, "You're imagining things," or "You always make me the bad guy." You might find yourself apologizing just to make the tension stop. That's the emotional conditioning that keeps people stuck in narcissistic relationships. You begin to link peace with compliance. If you just keep them happy, things will be okay. But that peace always comes with a price: your voice, your confidence, your boundaries. Over time, you start to change without realizing it. You stop bringing up issues because it's not worth the fight. You start second-guessing yourself because they've trained you to doubt your perception. You become quieter, smaller, trying not to upset them. And that's exactly where they want you. Compliant but loyal, drained but still there. They feed off your energy, your reactions, your emotions, even your pain. It's all fuel for their ego. The moment you get upset, they feel powerful again because they've proven they can still control your emotional state. When you try to express how you feel, they'll deflect. They'll bring up the one time you made a mistake, or they'll play the victim. "I guess I can't do anything right," they'll say, making you feel guilty for even speaking up. Narcissists don't argue to solve problems. They argue to win. Every disagreement becomes a power struggle, and their goal is to break your confidence, not find resolution. They don't want understanding, they want dominance. You'll notice they have two sides: the public version, charming, kind, charismatic, and the private version, critical, cold, and controlling. When you tell others about their behavior, no one believes you because the narcissist has already built their image carefully. That's why victims often stay silent. They feel isolated, misunderstood, even ashamed, and that silence becomes the narcissist's greatest weapon. But here's the truth: the moment you stop feeding their ego, they reveal themselves. When you stop reacting, stop explaining, stop trying to fix things, their mask slips. They'll start showing anger, resentment, and cruelty. They'll call you selfish for setting boundaries. They'll accuse you of being distant when you're simply protecting your peace. They'll twist your reality until you start questioning your own sanity. That's called gaslighting, and it's one of their most destructive tactics. They'll say, "That never happened," or "You're remembering it wrong," until you start wondering if you're actually crazy. You're not. You're just being manipulated by someone who fears losing control. What makes it worse is that narcissists can be incredibly convincing. They'll cry when they need to, promise to change, act loving again, just enough to pull you back in. But once you're hooked again, the same pattern repeats. Love, control, withdrawal, blame, over and over. It's a psychological loop designed to keep you dependent. They'll train you to crave the highs of their approval just as much as you fear the lows of their anger. That's not love. That's control dressed up as care. If you really want to know whether someone is narcissistic, watch how they handle your no. Do they respect it or do they punish you for it? Because healthy love doesn't demand submission. It values mutual respect. Narcissistic love, on the other hand, demands obedience. They don't love you for who you are. They love you for how you make them feel about themselves. You're not a partner in their eyes. You're a reflection, a mirror that must always show them as flawless. And when that mirror cracks, they'll blame you for the reflection. Recognizing this pattern is painful because it forces you to admit that what you thought was love was actually control. But it's also liberating because once you see it clearly, you stop taking their behavior personally. You realize their cruelty isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their emptiness. They act powerful because they're terrified of being powerless. They manipulate because they fear being abandoned. Their ego isn't confidence, it's armor. And when you stop feeding it, they crumble. The truth is, you can't fix a narcissist by loving them harder. You can't save them by sacrificing yourself. The only thing you can do is recognize the pattern, reclaim your power, and step out of the cycle. Because real love doesn't demand your silence. Real love doesn't make you feel small. Real love doesn't punish you for having needs, opinions, or boundaries. The day you understand that is the day you stop chasing validation from someone incapable of giving real love. The first sign of a narcissistic partner isn't how passionately they love you. It's how they handle your independence, your no, your truth. That's where the mask falls. And when it does, don't look away. Because that's not the end of your story. That's the beginning of your freedom. A narcissistic partner doesn't always control through anger or loudness. Their most dangerous weapon is confusion. Because confusion makes you question yourself, not them. They don't need to yell to dominate. They can do it with calm words and a sweet tone that sounds caring on the surface but cuts deeply underneath. They know how to disguise manipulation as concern. They'll say, I just want what's best for you. Right after criticizing you, they'll pretend to guide you while quietly controlling every decision you make. That's how they trap you, not by force, but by making you doubt your own judgment. At first, it's subtle. They'll give small suggestions that sound thoughtful. Maybe don't wear that. It doesn't suit you. You shouldn't hang out with them. They're not a good influence. It seems like care. But over time, these suggestions become rules, and those rules become limits on your freedom. You start noticing you're changing, not because you want to, but because you're scared of disappointing them. You'll find yourself double, checking everything, what you wear, what you say, who you talk to. They've made you believe that every choice must pass through their approval first. They create confusion by mixing kindness with cruelty. One moment they're loving, attentive, and generous. The next, they're cold, dismissive, and distant. You never know which version of them you're going to get. That unpredictability keeps you anxious, always trying to do better, to earn back their affection. You start believing that maybe, if you just love them more, they'll stop changing. But that's the trap. The inconsistency isn't an accident, it's control. Because when love becomes a reward, you'll do anything to earn it. That's why narcissists use gaslighting. It's not just lying, it's rewriting your reality. They'll deny things that clearly happened. They'll change details in conversations, flip your words, and make you feel like you're losing your mind. If you call them out, they'll say, you're remembering it wrong, or you're being dramatic. And because they deliver these lines with confidence, you start believing them. You start doubting yourself more than you doubt them. That's when they have full control, when you stop trusting your own mind. Eventually, you start staying quiet. You don't want to argue anymore. You don't want to be called sensitive or crazy. So you choose peace over truth, but the peace isn't real. It's just silence. You stop expressing how you feel because you already know they'll twist it. You stop defending yourself because you've learned it only makes things worse. You start walking on eggshells, afraid that one wrong word will set them off. That's not love, that's survival. Over time, you notice the relationship feels one-sided. You're always the one apologizing, always the one fixing things. Even when they hurt you, you end up comforting them. They'll say things like, I hate when we fight, and you'll feel guilty even though they started it. They play the victim so convincingly that you forget you're the one who's been wronged. They know exactly how to turn your empathy against you. The kinder you are, the more they take advantage of it. One of their favorite tactics is silent treatment. When you upset them, even slightly, they'll pull away, stop talking, or give you cold looks. You'll feel anxious, desperate to make things right. You'll over-apologize just to get back their affection. And the moment you do, they reward you with warmth again. That pattern conditions you to please them, to avoid conflict at any cost. But what you don't realize is that you're slowly disappearing. Your opinions fade, your needs shrink, and your confidence breaks down, all while they look perfectly calm. That's how emotional control works. It doesn't need noise. It thrives in silence. They'll also isolate you from others, gently at first, then completely. They'll tell you your friends don't understand your relationship. that your family is jealous or toxic. Soon you find yourself alone with only their voice shaping your reality. And once you're isolated, you're easier to control. You stop hearing outside perspectives that might wake you up. That's exactly what they want, to be your only source of truth. When you try to confront them, they'll use deflection. Instead of addressing the issue, they'll bring up your past mistakes. If you tell them they hurt you, they'll say, well, what about the time you did this? Or you're not perfect either. Suddenly the conversation shifts and you're the one on the defensive. They win arguments not because they're right, but because they never let you stay on topic. You'll start leaving conversations feeling guilty, even though you were the one trying to fix things. That's how they maintain control, by keeping you emotionally off balance. When you're confused, you can't think clearly. When you're doubting yourself, you can't trust your instincts. And when you're constantly trying to prove your loyalty, you stop noticing how unfair things have become. They don't want equality. They want emotional dominance. The longer you stay in that cycle, the more your self-esteem erodes. You begin to believe their version of you, that you're too much, too emotional, not enough. You start to internalize their criticism until it becomes your inner voice. That's why so many people in narcissistic relationships say, I don't even recognize myself anymore, because you lose your identity trying to keep the peace with someone who thrives on chaos. The truth is, they don't want resolution, they want reaction, because your reaction, whether it's anger, sadness, or confusion, feeds them. It reminds them they still have power over your emotions. That's why they'll poke at your insecurities right when you're calm. They'll provoke arguments right after you've made peace. It's not random, it's deliberate. They're addicted to control, and chaos is their favorite drug. Breaking free from that kind of manipulation starts with clarity. You can't change what you won't name. Once you start recognizing their tactics, the gaslighting, the guilt tripping, the emotional withdrawal, you start seeing the pattern. You realize the problem isn't your communication style or your sensitivity, it's their need for control. And when you stop explaining, stop defending, stop reacting, you take their power away. The moment you stop giving them emotional energy, they panic. They'll accuse you of being cold or distant. They'll say you've changed, but what you've actually done is reclaimed your peace. You've stopped feeding their control with your confusion. You've stopped being their mirror and started being yourself again. You don't win against a narcissist by arguing or proving your point. You win by not playing their game. You win by choosing clarity over confusion, truth over manipulation, silence over reaction. Because when you stop giving them what they crave, your emotion, your attention, you start starving the power they once had over you. In the end, recognizing their control tactics isn't about hating them. It's about freeing yourself. You can't change how they operate, but you can change what you respond to. And the moment you stop letting their manipulation define your reality, you begin to reclaim the one thing they were always afraid of losing, your independence. Healing from a narcissistic partner isn't about revenge. It's not about proving them wrong or making them feel what you felt. It's about rediscovering yourself, the person you were before the manipulation, before the gaslighting, before you began doubting your own worth. That version of you didn't need permission to exist. That version of you didn't shrink to avoid conflict. That version of you trusted your instincts, spoke your truth, and believed you deserved love without conditions. The first step in healing is finding that person again. When you've been with a narcissist, you begin to lose trust, not in them, but in yourself. Every decision you made felt questioned. Every emotion you expressed felt wrong. Every boundary you tried to set was met with punishment or guilt. Slowly, you internalize their perspective. I must be the problem. Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I don't deserve respect. Healing begins when you reject that internalized narrative and remind yourself that your feelings, opinions, and boundaries are valid. They are not optional. They are not negotiable. They are the foundation of your humanity. Unlearning the habits a narcissist instilled in you is crucial. You've learned to over-explain, to apologize excessively, to justify your every move. Healing requires unlearning those patterns. You stop seeking their approval because you realize it was never genuine. You stop shrinking yourself to avoid their anger because you realize the anger wasn't about you. It was about control. You stop questioning your reality because your perception is valid and your memory is real. Each of these steps is a reclaiming of power, a quiet but profound act of self-respect. Part of healing is rebuilding trust with yourself. When someone constantly manipulates and gaslights you, it erodes your confidence. You start doubting your instincts and second-guessing your judgment. Healing means listening to your own voice again. It means making decisions without fear of punishment. It means learning to say no and honoring that no without guilt or hesitation. You start small, asserting yourself in minor ways like choosing where to eat or how to spend your day, and gradually you expand to major life decisions. Every time you reclaim your choice, you rebuild trust in yourself. Distance is also a critical tool in healing. Emotional and physical separation from a narcissist allows perspective. It allows clarity. It allows you to see the patterns you were trapped in without the constant distortion of manipulation. The less you interact with them, the more space you have to understand what was really happening. You can see the repeated cycles of control, the moments of gaslighting, the ways your energy was exploited. That understanding isn't bitterness, it's liberation. Silence becomes a weapon, not for them, but for you. When you stop reacting, stop explaining, stop defending yourself, you regain power. A narcissist thrives on engagement, emotional, mental, and sometimes physical. Starve them of that engagement. Detach, not with hate, but with intention. Detach to protect your peace. Detach to reclaim your identity. Detach to rebuild the person they tried to erase. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel strong, others weak. You might catch yourself replaying memories, questioning if you overreacted, wondering if there was something you could have done differently. Those thoughts are normal. They are not signs of failure. They are signs that you are processing, slowly untangling the web of manipulation, recognizing that your value was never defined by how they treated you. Patience with yourself is essential. Every step forward, no matter how small, is progress. Another aspect of healing is setting firm boundaries with everyone moving forward. After being with someone who constantly violated yours, it's important to clearly define what you will accept and what you won't. Boundaries aren't punishment, they are protection. They are statements of self-worth. They are the invisible armor that ensures you never allow someone to exploit you again. Saying no, walking away, or removing toxic individuals from your life becomes an act of self-respect. Forgiveness, if it happens at all, comes last and only on your terms. You do not need to forgive a narcissist to move on. You do not need closure from them because their apology will never truly match the pain caused. Closure is internal. The closure comes when you stop needing them to acknowledge the damage, to understand your pain, or to make amends. Closure comes when you choose yourself over their validation. When you no longer give them the power to disrupt your peace, you have found closure. Healing also means reconnecting with your passions, dreams, and life goals, the things that were put on hold because they were never prioritized by a narcissist. They don't care about your ambitions unless it serves them. They don't celebrate your achievements unless it reflects well on them. Now, you have the freedom to pursue what you love unapologetically. Whether it's career, hobbies, or relationships with healthy people, invest in what fulfills you. Rediscovering joy is a form of rebellion against the manipulation you endured. It's reclaiming the life they try to control. The journey is as much mental as it is emotional. You will have to confront the reality that what you experienced wasn't your fault. You will have to remind yourself daily that being manipulated doesn't make you weak. It makes you human, capable of being deceived by someone highly skilled in deceit, but also capable of rising above it. Every affirmation of your value, every act of self-care, every boundary you enforce, strengthens your foundation and diminishes their lingering power. Finally, the ultimate goal of healing is peace and self-respect, not revenge, not control over them, not the satisfaction of making them see what they lost. Real healing is quiet, it's internal. It's powerful because it cannot be taken away by anyone else. You become untouchable, not through domination, but through self-possession. You no longer need their validation because you validate yourself. You no longer seek their approval because your self-worth is independent. You no longer fear their opinion because you recognize it was never a reflection of your true value. Healing from a narcissistic partner is not about returning to who you were before them. It's about creating a stronger, wiser version of yourself. It's about choosing yourself every day, reaffirming your worth, and refusing to allow anyone to diminish it again. You emerge from the experience not bitter, but resilient. Not fragile, but unshockable. Not dependent, but whole. And in that wholeness, you reclaim your life, your energy, and your peace. The things a narcissist never could take unless you allowed them to. You don't just survive after a narcissistic relationship, you thrive. And that thriving is the ultimate act of victory.